Mark and Sarah were the kind of couple that others envied. They had been married for nearly a decade, their love seemingly growing stronger with each passing year. Friends often commented on how perfect they were for each other, and their colleagues would occasionally express admiration for how effortlessly they balanced their demanding careers with a loving home life. Mark was a successful architect, while Sarah had carved out a respected position in a prestigious marketing firm. Together, they seemed to have it all: prosperity, companionship, and a deep, unshakable bond. To anyone looking from the outside, Mark and Sarah were the epitome of a happy, modern couple. They hosted dinner parties that were the talk of their social circle, always laughing, always in sync. Their shared interests and mutual respect were apparent in every interaction, making them the embodiment of what many believed a perfect marriage should be. But beneath the surface, Mark began to sense that something was amiss. It started subtly at first. Sarah began working late more frequently, claiming that her company was pushing for a big project. She would come home well after Mark had already eaten dinner alone, offering vague explanations about meetings that ran long or unexpected deadlines. Mark wanted to believe her, he really did. But the late nights were soon accompanied by a different kind of distance, an emotional one. The woman who once couldn't wait to share the details of her day with him was now reserved, her phone always within reach and her laughter noticeably absent. When Mark would ask about her day, she would offer short, non-committal answers, her attention often distracted by a buzzing phone or a quickly dismissed text. As weeks turned into months, the tension in their home grew. Mark found himself lying awake at night, replaying conversations in his mind, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when everything started to feel different. There were too many unanswered questions, too many signs that something was terribly wrong. And while he desperately wanted to trust Sarah, the growing distance between them gnawed at him, whispering that the woman he loved might be hiding something far more sinister than just late nights at the office. As the days passed, Mark's suspicions grew too heavy to ignore. He had always trusted Sarah implicitly, but the nagging feeling that something was wrong had taken root deep inside him. Every unexplained late night, every hushed phone conversation seemed to add fuel to the fire of doubt burning within him. It wasn't just the changed behavior. It was the sense that Sarah was slipping away from him, piece by piece. Unable to shake the feeling, Mark decided to take matters into his own hands. He hated the idea of spying on his wife, but the thought of continuing to live in uncertainty was unbearable. One evening, after Sarah had gone to bed, Mark sat alone in his office, his heart pounding as he made the decision to cross a line he never thought he would. With a few keystrokes, he installed monitoring software on Sarah's phone and laptop, tools that would give him access to her messages, emails, and social media accounts. The next few days were a blur of tension and anxiety. Mark would check the software logs late at night or during breaks at work, his heart racing each time he opened the app. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual exchanges between Sarah and her friends or colleagues. But then, a message appeared that made Mark's blood run cold. It was from James, one of Sarah's coworkers, and it was far too familiar for comfort. Mark's hands trembled as he scrolled through the thread of messages. What started as seemingly innocent work-related chats had evolved into something much more personal, much more intimate. The flirty banter, the inside jokes, the not-so-subtle compliments. It was all there in black and white, undeniable proof that something had shifted between them. As Mark continued to read, his worst fears were confirmed. The messages soon took a darker turn, revealing a relationship that had crossed the line from professional to something far more sinister. Sarah and James had been meeting in secret, their affair carefully hidden under the guise of late-night work sessions and business trips. The more Mark uncovered, the more betrayed he felt. Every sweet word Sarah had whispered to him now felt like a lie, every smile a mask hiding her infidelity. Yet, as much as it tore him apart, Mark remained eerily calm. He knew that confronting Sarah in a fit of rage would only give her the upper hand. Instead, he decided to play the long game, to gather every piece of evidence he could before making his move. If Sarah was going to betray him so completely, then Mark would ensure that her betrayal was exposed for all to see. For now, he would pretend that everything was normal, that he was blissfully unaware of the affair. But behind the calm facade, Mark was meticulously planning his next steps, determined to exact his revenge in the most devastating way possible. With his suspicions confirmed, Mark's focus shifted from the pain of betrayal to the cold, calculated task of gathering evidence. He knew that to expose Sarah's affair in the most impactful way, he needed to be meticulous. There could be no room for doubt, no chance for Sarah to deny the truth. Every piece of evidence had to be undeniable, every detail perfectly aligned to ensure that when the moment came, her world would come crashing down. Mark started by compiling the text messages between Sarah and James. Every flirtatious remark, every secret meeting arranged under the guise of work was carefully documented. He took screenshots of the most incriminating exchanges, making sure to include timestamps and context. The messages alone were damning, but Mark wanted more, something that would leave no room for excuses. Next, Mark turned his attention to their photos. He sifted through Sarah's cloud storage and social media accounts, looking for any images that might reveal the depth of their relationship. Most were carefully curated to appear innocent, but Mark had a keen eye for detail. He noticed the way they stood just a little too close in group photos, the way their hands brushed against each other when they thought no one was looking. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build a case. Then came the videos. Mark knew that a simple collection of texts and photos might not be enough to fully capture the betrayal, so he began monitoring their interactions more closely. He set up hidden cameras in their home, capturing Sarah's late-night phone calls with James, the hushed conversations filled with laughter and longing. He even managed to record one of their secret meetings through a cleverly disguised camera in Sarah's car. The footage was raw, undeniable proof of their affair. Over the course of several weeks, Mark painstakingly assembled everything into a single, cohesive narrative. He used his skills as an architect to design a video, a blueprint for their downfall. The video started innocently enough, with images of Sarah and Mark's life together, happy and carefree. But as the video progressed, the tone shifted. The text messages appeared on screen, overlaid with photos of Sarah and James. The video built to a crescendo with the secret footage, revealing the full extent of their betrayal. As Mark watched the final product, he felt a cold sense of satisfaction. This was no longer just about revenge, it was about reclaiming his dignity, about showing everyone the truth that had been hidden behind closed doors. He knew exactly when and where the video would be shown: at Sarah's upcoming company event, where both she and James would be present. The thought of exposing them in front of their colleagues, their friends, made the pain of the past few weeks almost bearable. Mark's plan was now in motion, and there was no turning back. He had all the proof he needed, and soon Sarah would be forced to face the consequences of her actions. The day of the event arrived, and the air was thick with excitement. Sarah's company had spared no expense in organizing a grand gala, celebrating the success of their latest project, a project that Sarah and James had played pivotal roles in. The venue was a luxurious hotel ballroom, adorned with elegant decorations and filled with the hum of conversation and laughter. It was the perfect backdrop for a night of celebration, and for Mark, the perfect stage for his carefully planned revelation. Mark had ensured his invitation to the event by posing as Sarah's supportive husband, eager to see her shine. As he walked into the ballroom, he was the picture of calm, greeting Sarah's colleagues with a smile that betrayed nothing of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Sarah herself was radiant, dressed in an elegant gown, her eyes bright with the anticipation of a successful evening. James was there too, always by her side, his demeanor casual and confident as if he had nothing to hide. The event progressed smoothly, with speeches and presentations celebrating the achievements of the team. Mark stayed close to the back, keeping a low profile as he waited for the right moment. The tension within him was almost unbearable, but he knew that patience was key. He needed to time his move perfectly. As the evening reached its climax, the event's organizers announced a special video presentation, a montage celebrating the hard work and dedication of the employees who had made the project a success. It was the moment Mark had been waiting for. He slipped away from the crowd and made his way to the control room, where the video equipment was set up. Mark had already arranged everything with a well-placed bribe to the technician, who discreetly left the room, leaving Mark alone to execute his plan. With a few quick keystrokes, Mark replaced the planned presentation with his own video. He returned to the ballroom just in time to see the lights dim and the screen come to life. At first, the audience was treated to exactly what they expected: images of the team hard at work, smiling faces, and shots of completed projects. But then, the tone began to shift. The screen flickered, and the images of work were replaced by something far more personal. The text messages between Sarah and James appeared. their flirtatious banter projected for all to see. A murmur spread through the crowd as people began to realize what they were witnessing. The messages were followed by photos, subtly damning at first, but growing more explicit as the video continued. Then came the footage, Sarah and James, caught in moments they thought were private, their voices filled with affection and longing. The ballroom fell silent as the final segment played. A recording of Sarah and James in a parking lot, their conversation leaving no doubt about the nature of their relationship. When the video ended, there was a moment of stunned silence, as if the entire room was collectively holding its breath. Then, chaos erupted. Gasps of shock, whispers, and hurried conversations filled the air. Sarah stood frozen, her face pale as the blood drained from it. James looked equally stunned, his confident facade shattered. Around them, colleagues and superiors stared in disbelief. The night's celebration turned into a scandalous nightmare. Mark watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding in his chest. He had expected satisfaction, but what he felt in that moment was a complex mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and a deep, lingering sadness for what had been lost. As Sarah turned to him, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal, he simply shook his head and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. In that instant, Sarah's career, her reputation, and her carefully constructed life began to unravel. The event was over, and so was the charade that had been their marriage. The fallout from the public exposure was swift and brutal. As the incriminating video spread like wildfire through the company, Sarah's world began to crumble around her. The morning after the event, she was called into a meeting with the company's executives. What had been intended as a discussion of her future with the company quickly turned into a dismissal. The firm could not afford to be associated with such a scandal, and Sarah's betrayal, now public knowledge, left her with no defense. Her resignation was quietly demanded, and within hours, she was escorted out of the building that had once been the center of her professional life. News of the scandal spread quickly throughout the industry, and Sarah's once bright career prospects dimmed. Colleagues who had once admired her distanced themselves, unwilling to risk their own reputations by associating with her. Offers for new positions that had seemed certain only days before evaporated as word of her disgrace circulated. Sarah found herself isolated, her professional network in tatters, her reputation irreparably damaged. James didn't fare much better. His role in the affair became the talk of the office, and though he wasn't immediately fired, his future at the company was bleak. He was reassigned to a lesser role, his ambitions for advancement crushed. The affair had cost him not only his standing in the company, but also his personal relationships, as whispers of his infidelity reached his family and friends. The very relationship that had seemed so thrilling to him was now a source of shame and regret. Meanwhile, Mark was already beginning to move on. The act of exposing Sarah's betrayal had been cathartic, a way to reclaim the power and self-respect that had been stolen from him. The weeks of gathering evidence, the cold precision of his plan, had given him the strength to endure the heartache and anger that had once consumed him. Now, with the deed done, he felt an unexpected sense of peace. Mark took steps to rebuild his life, one day at a time. He filed for divorce, and the process was surprisingly quick and amicable. Sarah, too ashamed to fight, signed the papers without protest. Mark sold the house that had once been their shared home, finding a new place where he could start fresh. He reconnected with old friends who offered their support and reminded him that he was more than the sum of his marriage's failures. As he settled into his new life, Mark found that the pain of Sarah's betrayal no longer weighed him down. He had faced it head-on, exposed it to the light, and in doing so, had stripped it of its power over him. The revenge he had exacted wasn't just about punishing Sarah. It was about freeing himself from the hold her infidelity had over him. And now, with that chapter of his life closed, he could finally look toward the future with hope and confidence. In the end, Mark emerged stronger, not just because he had brought Sarah to justice, but because he had refused to let her actions define him. He had taken control of his own narrative, turning what could have been a story of defeat into one of resilience and triumph. As he stood on the threshold of his new life, Mark knew that he was ready for whatever came next, his past behind him and his future wide open. Thank you for watching this intense and emotional journey of betrayal and redemption. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of real men overcoming life's toughest challenges, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you more stories like this one. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Only Stories About Men so you never miss an update. We have plenty more stories of resilience, revenge, and ultimately, triumph waiting for you. See you in the next one.